Hey guys, welcome to lesson 3. We're going to talk about the number e. So hopefully you saw the video that I put on Schoology, and so we're just going to kind of do some different things with it. Um, so the first thing that I want to talk about is simplifying. So basically we're just talking about exponent rules. So I'm just going to do like e to the 5 plus 2 power, so e to the 7th power. So when you're simplifying, just think those exponent rules. So 12 divided by 3, that's 4. And then I have I have 4 e's on top and 3 e's on bottom. So I have 1 e on top. So my final answer would just be 4e. Over here, remember, think about this as 5e to the negative 3x power 2 times. So another way to think of it is we're going to distribute that 2 to both things, but I just wanted to give you a visual of what's going on here. So we have 25e to the negative 6x power. Okay, let's keep going. So down here, we're actually going to use our calculator. So take a chance right now, like I want you to push pause here in a second and look for an E button. You might see it with that. This is called a natural log. So you might see it around that button, but you're going to look for this. Some calculators have a button like that. Either one of those is just fine. Probably most calculators will look like that. So see if you can play around with your calculator. If not, we can kind of figure this out on Zoom if you guys are having issues with it. So um, when I type this in my calculator, e to the 4th power, I just like literally put it in as I see it, or like a caret button, but you should be getting around 54.598. So go ahead and do the other two and see what you get, and then we'll come back. So these should have been your two answers. When you typed in your calculator. So the calculator is helpful, especially when we get to the graphing. We're just going to be dealing with yucky numbers, and we're going to see that in a second. So in the video, you learned that E was about 2.71. It's just kind of like a pi. You know how pi is an irrational number and it's about 3.14. Same thing, like E is 2.71-ish. So thinking about that, so if I had like 2.71 to the x power, if that's my base, then that's going to give me a growth. If I have 1 over 2.71, that's a number in between 0 and 1, so that is going to be a decay. And then finally, this one, think about this. I'm flipping this over. So this is a sneaky snake decay. So be careful when you see that negative sign. Okay, so now we're going to get into the graphing. And again, like I said, you can use some of the techniques that we talked about in yesterday's lesson, but I would just stick with just kind of number crunching it. If you can figure out how to do what we just talked about, like this on your calculator, if you can do that, you can just kind of number crunch the yucky numbers in here. So I always start with 0 because anything to the 0 power is 1. So that's going to give me like a nice place to start there. So when I type in e to the 1st power, we just found out that that's 2.71. E to the 2nd power, you number crunch that, it's going to be about 7.39. So that's getting really big. So let's go the other way. Let's go -1. That's going to be 0.368. Okay, so let's graph this and see what's going on. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right there, and then -1 right here. So if you'll notice, it's a definite exponential growth. Sorry, this is hideous. I know. It's an exponential growth function, and we're going to have that horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. Your domain is going to be, again, from negative infinity to positive infinity. That hasn't changed. And then my range is going to be from my asymptote to positive infinity. Okay, so this one is very similar. So you can notice at this, I'm just taking all my y values and pretty much multiplying them by -1. So go ahead and try this. I'm going to push pause and I'll come back and see what you have done on this. Okay, so I just finished the negative version. So notice that these points are very similar to these points over here. It's just that instead of making, like on the other graph, where this was a positive 2, 7.39, and a positive 1, 2.71, it's going to be negative. So all of my x values flip-flopped. And again, that makes sense because of that guy there. Okay, so when I graphed this, what happened is it went from an exponential growth function to an exponential decay function. So it went down here. Okay, so I want you to, I'm going to start you off on this one, and then I want you to take it over. So again, I always like to start with 0 because e to the 0 power is 1. And so I'm going to start off with 0, 3. Notice we learned yesterday that K is designates our horizontal asymptote. And since we don't have any on any of these, you don't have to worry about it. So y is just going to equal 0. And our domain is always, oops, I don't know why I did that, is always negative infinity to positive infinity. So what I want you to do is just number crunch some numbers and get a good look for your graph here. And we'll come back in a second. Okay, so you'll notice here that I put the yucky numbers in here and it made an exponential growth function. So think about that, like that e, that's still like 2.71, so our base, so it should be a growth function. Okay, so these are just weird ones. Notice that this is a 0.25, so it's going to get, it's going to take a long time to get bigger. And then this one, notice that it's shifted to I can even think, sorry, to the right 4. And so we'll just have some weird numbers there. Go ahead and try both of them and see what you can do, and I will do them too, and then we can come back and talk about it. Okay, so these are the last 2 graphs, and this is about as bad as it gets. So again, just like what I said, I noticed like as I was going through these numbers, I went like from 1 to 2, and it really didn't change very much. So I jumped to 5, and it was still at like 3.5. So then I jumped to, I think I originally jumped to 10, and it was over 10. I think it was like 12 maybe. So I went down to 9. So this took a long time to really get up there. But that's how this should look. There's your horizontal asymptote and domain and range and all that good stuff. Over here, my approach is that I looked at that, and instead of starting with the 0, I put a 4 in there so that whole thing would become 0. I just started there. You don't have to do that. I just wanted to. And so here are all of my answers. You do not have to have the same numbers I do, but we should all get the same look here. And again, this is your horizontal asymptote, domain, and range, and that is it.